Hello. Today's episode number 20 of the Professor Slots podcasts discuss what to expect from Professor Slots in 2018. I primarily plan to focus on growing my audience. I'll do this by providing great content through my weekly podcasts and state reviews. I'll continue to promote Professor Slots, and this fall start creating short, straight-to-the-point YouTube videos, plus slot machine casino gambling in the great U.S. state of Kansas. Thank you for joining me for the Professor Slots podcast show. I'm John Friedel, and this is the podcast about slot machine casino gambling. It is where I provide the knowledge, insights, and tools for helping you improve your slot machine gambling performance. Show notes are available within most podcast apps or at professorslots.com/E20.
John Friedel from the Professor Slots blog reveals all his tips and tricks for thriving in the casino environment. Choose winning slot machines and identify your gambling goals. Being entertained, earning comps, winning take-home cash, or combining them. John has won 90 taxable jackpots and a luxury car in 9 months of slot play and made a profit at slots gambling since 2013.
In case you missed it, on last week's episode, I went over what it's like to win a luxury car at a casino, including the questions to ask beforehand, assessment of the risks involved, as well as what can be done about those pesky income taxes. I also reviewed Iowa's slot machine casino gambling. I hope you enjoyed listening to my last episode as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Remember to visit professorslots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Let's get started with the first segment of the show, what to expect from Professor Slots in 2018. To know where we are going, we first need to know where we've been. I'll be taking this approach with today's episode. Providing a brief explanation of what I've accomplished so far will make my plans for 2018 a lot more understandable. Consider this episode a kind of behind-the-scenes look at my Professor Slots brand. This is important to both of us because I'm very interested in meeting your needs as a slots enthusiast. Frankly, in the future, I want to provide you exactly what you want and need. A few of my past approaches haven't been terribly successful when I haven't made that my mission, as I think you'll understand shortly. Let's get right to it, shall we? This segment has the following subsections: Introduction, Deciding to Write, Failure to Publish Traditionally, Luckily, Launching a Business, Making Progress in 2017, What to Expect from Professor Slots in 2018, and a summary. My Professor Slots business through John Friedel LLC was officially launched on October 31st, 2016. Yes, that was indeed Halloween. I chose Halloween as a launch day to recognize my feelings that starting my own business was, in some ways, scary. I'd originally decided to start a business when I won a car at a casino on August 31st, 2014, but I had a few well-intentioned but naive false starts. I spent the rest of 2014 through March of 2015 taking notes of everything I'd learned and writing down various amusing anecdotes of things I'd seen during my extraordinary 9-month experience of winning 90 taxable jackpots and then a car. Everything about having my own business began to crystallize in 2015. In March of 2015, I went on a cruise to the Western Caribbean with my sister. This was one of those free 7-day cruises from Caesars Entertainment's Total Rewards program, which they provide for 2 for their top-tier status 7 stars members. I'd had one prior such cruise in 2014. Alaska was nice. But this time, thought my sister would appreciate going someplace warm during the tail end of winter. I'm not a particularly big fan of warm weather, but my sister sure is. I'm fond of her, so she enjoyed herself, for the most part, while I spent much of my time writing a book based on all my notes, thoughts, and memories that I'd been collecting. On the cruise, I also had a few conversations about winning at slots with the other passengers, from which I observed something that seemed incredible to me. Of the 10 people I spoke with, at least 9, or possibly all 10, just kept right on talking with me. At the end of the cruise, it dawned on me that if I had been writing, say, a cookbook, only one or two of those individuals would have continued the conversation as they had. So that particular working cruise taught me that I had a great idea. And the topic of a book, I have been taught, can't just be a good idea. It has to be a great idea. Winning at playing slot machines was a topic that people liked. This motivated me to launch my Professor Slots brand, which I thought at the time was all about writing and publishing a nonfiction book. It took another year to finish writing my book, Learning to Win, after which I began looking for both a literary agent and a publisher. This is one of those false starts I mentioned earlier. It turns out that publishing a book of nonfiction is quite a different process from what little I'd known about publishing a work of fiction. Writing fiction requires writing the entire book, then trying to sell it. See, publishers want to know what happens in a work of fiction. However, nonfiction books actually start out as book proposals, which, if sold to a publisher for an advance and all that, is only then written by the author. Also, when a book proposal is sold to a publisher, then the publisher is the new owner of the content outlined in the proposal. The publishing house decides what the title is, and the author is lucky to be consulted on it. The publisher decides how to market the book, deciding how much or how little to market it as well. Will there be a book tour? And what about the cover art? The publishing house decides these things too. I was very surprised by all this. Who knew? But it was worse than that. That was how it used to be, and has evolved somewhat from that process. Publishing has changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. Once, publishers would effectively market the book for an author. If that book didn't sell, if it took a loss, the publisher would usually give the author another 2 tries or so to successfully sell a book. Nowadays, publishers want authors to already have an author's platform. It's not important how many Twitter followers the author has, but rather the speed at which they have been gaining Twitter followers over the last few weeks and months. I remember what a literary agent said to me at a writing conference I went to. He said, "How many people subscribe to your radio show? Is it 20,000 or 30,000? His question was not about my Professor Slots podcast, as I knew next to nothing about podcasting at the time, and certainly didn't yet have a show. But it certainly was the question got me started thinking about having a podcast. With traditional book publishing being a non-starter, due to not yet having an audience, much less a quickly growing audience, or rather a quickly enough growing audience, I turned my attention to self-publishing. Another second false start for me was continuing to be overly concerned about traditional publishing. Right or wrong, I'd been warned that it could ruin my chances of ever being able to publish a book in the traditional manner if I self-published instead, and subsequently failed at it, as most do. Low sales, I was told, would be taken as evidence I would never successfully publish a book in my lifetime, and would therefore never get a book contract. Having thought about it for some time now, I think this was simply bad information from a less than fully honest literary agent, in part because other bits of publishing insight they'd provided has since been proven to be incorrect. But all this interaction did provide me with my own insights into their motivations. Frankly, the publishing industry is scared spitless of the self-publishing approach. I can appreciate that the careers are in jeopardy because of all the many changes in the publishing industry of late, and certainly using the old dream many have of being a published author is an effective way to try to stop people from self-publishing. But I recognized this pattern for what it was, and began to understand my motivations for wanting to be a published author. I didn't actually want to be a published author. That was a goal and not a need. You know the old adage about the difference between a goal and a need, right? One story to explain the difference goes like this. If you go to a hardware store for a 1/8 inch diameter drill bit, that's a goal. That's not the need. The need is to have a 1/8 inch diameter hole. So my goal or mission is to help people, and by genuinely doing so, making enough money to pay off my student loan debt, and, this is my stretch goal here, to have some left over for retirement. And my need? The need that would make all this happen? My need was to have an audience. So in April of 2016, I grew into the idea of having an online business. I set a goal of launching the business in October of 2016, as a lot of preparation was necessary. I learned about WordPress and website themes, about starting a limited liability corporation, the importance of starting an audience email list as early as possible, and I learned about social media. I've previously gotten compliments from friends about my personal Facebook account. Otherwise, my LinkedIn account was fairly decent for someone in the aerospace profession. I won't even mention my old MySpace account. All this was useful and meant I wouldn't be starting completely from scratch. The problem was, that was simply all I knew about social media. I think I might have heard of Twitter before, but certainly had never tweeted or twitted. Consequently, I had to spend a month or more individually learning about Facebook pages, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, and YouTube. A month or more learning about each, just to be clear. And so I did. Soonest started, soonest done. I combined all these social media accounts to promote a Professor Slots website on which I plan to regularly post articles about slot machine casino gambling. After about a year, Google Analytics showed that I had an average number of 12 website visitors per day. Ouch. In 2017, as the saying goes, I pivoted my Professor Slots brand. According to the latest podcast host, one blog website out of every 2,000 has a podcast if the owner is male. It is a far higher ratio if the blogger is female, something like 4,700 for every female blogger. With something like 600 million bloggers out there, podcasting is a great way to distinguish yourself. I had a lot to learn, and so I did that too, as you very well know, dear listener. I had a lot to learn about podcasting, but I did the work and successfully published my first episode on September 17th, 2017. About 2.5 weeks later, I published my second episode and have been publishing one episode every week since then. May I never miss a week in the future. At this time, I've published 19 episodes, this is the 20th, and have another 40 or so episodes planned. The Google Analytics statistics for my Professor Slots website has shown a 5x jump in average daily visits in only 3 months. Yesterday, 92 people visited my Professor Slots website. According to Google Analytics, all this increased traffic is from organic search, which is great. After 30 days, each of my podcast episodes currently has an average of about 200 downloads and is listened to in 32 countries. Now that's progress. Also in 2017, I decided to build an online resource for slots enthusiasts. This is a state-by-state review of state gaming regulations and state tribal gaming compacts. It includes not just the U.S. states, but also U.S. territories, as well as our single federal district. There has been just so many more casinos allowed since 2008. I began my online resource with weekly website articles starting on June 1st, 2017. I'm working my way alphabetically through the 50 U.S. states, 5 U.S. territories, and 1 federal district. 56 articles over 56 weeks, assuming I stay on schedule. So I will have an article completed on each on Thursday, June 22nd, 2018. Given the dynamic environment of gaming in the U.S., after the final article in the series is provided, I plan to simply start over from the top. Every 56 weeks, for as long as my audience wants or needs them, I'll update my review of the state of gambling in U.S. states, U.S. territories, and federal district. This is, in effect, the online resource I am building for you. As I've mentioned elsewhere, U.S. gaming regulations are primarily the responsibility of individual states, territories, and federal district. These states, territories, and federal districts are the gaming jurisdictions within the United States. The only federal law connecting them is through the U.S. Department of the Interior, which, in part, is the federal agency for approving state tribal gaming compacts. In brief, these gaming compacts is the process set forth in the Federal Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988 for states negotiating a compact with a federally recognized American Indian tribe. I should mention that the intent of my podcast is to build an audience for my website. I try to be entertaining and informative on my podcast, but I am running a business, and I have a business model. To learn the full details of how to win at playing slots, my lawyer has advised me that I cannot just have a deep conversation on these topics without my terms of use first having been agreed to. Establishing terms of use policies was certainly very interesting. For example, I learned that if they're not fair, then the judge of any case will simply throw them out for being, and I'm using my own words here, for being ridiculous. Agreeing to my terms of use is as fair to you as it is to me. Read them and see. What I did in 2017 was to begin to understand my false starts. It wasn't just that I wrote a complete book prior to having a book publishing contract in place. Oh, as an aside, I'm glad I did write the book, by the way. Doing so allowed me to review all I'd learned very carefully, which was useful in and of itself. But also, it wasn't just about placing an overabundance of possible business success on writing a book. What I began to understand was that I needed an audience. With an audience, I can ask them what they want from me. That's key. Maybe it's the 237-page PDF ebook available on my website. Or maybe they'd prefer it on Kindle, or to have a paperback version. Maybe you, don't want my information on how to win at slots in a book at all. Instead, maybe you want an online video series, or personal coaching, or, well, any number of other products. For example, I've already self-published a short Kindle ebook on Amazon called A How-To Guide to Casino Slots, What Everyone Should Know Before Playing Slots. Again, its intent is to push people towards my website that they might not otherwise visit. By the way, I very recently added my original book to Amazon Kindle, Learning to Win, How to Make a Profit at Slot Machine Casino Gambling. I'm currently working on making it available as a softcover paperback. It's a little tricky, but I'm getting there. With all that being said, it is my hope that all my plans for 2018, what to expect from Professor Slots in 2018, will be quite a bit more understandable. My intent for 2018 is to grow my audience. But what does that mean? What are my intended actions? What are my goals to accomplish this need? Well, let me tell you. From everything I've learned and subsequently thought my way through, my primary goal is to provide good content. In 2018, I will be striving to provide the best podcast episodes I possibly can. No doubt I'll get better, or at least that is my hope. To meet this good content goal in another way, I also plan on writing the best website articles I can, which includes going back to providing topical articles regularly. With all this work of learning how to podcast, I simply stopped providing them around the middle of 2017. But I have a long list of ideas for these, mostly centered around popular Google searches involving questions people have about all aspects of slot machines. I've already gotten started with updating a few that will need to be updated annually, as well as others of interest. A term bloggers use is evergreen, which is a way to express that something might be of interest for more than a few days. Evergreen means that it could be of interest for years. That's how I want just about all my articles to be. I already regularly provide my online resource of weekly articles on the state of gambling in each U.S. state, U.S. territory, and federal district. But in July of 2018, I'll be starting the series over again. Sure, a lot will have happened with regards to slot machine casino gambling in those gaming jurisdictions, but it's also an opportunity to switch up the format a bit. I'm sure to have a few ideas once I've finished researching each, and maybe I'll also hear from a few of you about what you'd like to know about the states you gamble in. Also, there are the show notes for these podcast episodes. From what I can tell, those web pages appear to get some attention and are, therefore, useful for my audience. But could they be better? And if so, how? Finally, I'll also start on getting my YouTube channel up and running by publishing short 4 to 8 minute videos on slot machine gambling, of course. It will take several months to launch this component of my business, as I have a lot to learn, again, about how to do it right. The intent of these videos is to provide interesting, informative, good content. It will hopefully encourage viewers and subscribers to visit my Professor Slots website. I'll tell you the reason I am taking on this new avenue of social media. First, it's to continue to grow my audience. Second, once it's big enough to ask, I'm pretty sure my audience is going to want something that will include a video. To be proactive, I need to learn how to do video as well. As another adage goes, that's 2 birds with 1 stone. In addition to all this, to effectively grow my audience, I simply have to promote my Professor Slots brand. At this point, promoting is primarily centered around being a guest on other gambling podcasts. I've done this 4 times in 2017 with mixed results, but have several more opportunities identified for 2018. I currently have something set up for next Tuesday, where I'll be interviewed on another gambling podcast, a very popular one, and we'll let you know if or when that will become available. Also, a few weeks ago, I was originally interviewed for about 30 minutes, and that should come out at about the same time. Not to jump off topic, but I have maybe an amusing anecdote. Did I tell you what I said to my aerospace engineering boss a few weeks ago when I was finishing up a meeting with him but had to get to one of these recordings? Well, I just said to him, I have to go. I have an interview. Oh, the look of shock and betrayal on his face. I was immediately like, no, it's an interview for the show. I felt so bad. He's such a nice guy. Getting back on topic, there also appears to be an opportunity to provide guest blog articles on other gambling websites, which should be interesting and hopefully as helpful as being on someone else's gambling podcast. What's different about these articles versus podcasts is how evergreen articles can be. Podcasts can be made evergreen, but a lot of gambling podcasts I might yet be interviewed on have a lot of current event information besides my interview. And an article I write is something I have a lot of control over. I'll definitely be making these guest posts evergreen content, but I'm not sure the podcast interviews can be. I'll be sure to let you know about the podcast episodes and guest blogs as they are published. For those interested, I'd previously shared about 700 posters and slot tips of the day created in early 2017 and published on social media. Those are unlikely to be seen again on my website or through social media due to the ongoing evolution of Google Search, Facebook, Twitter, and other aspects of social media and the internet. For example, recent changes announced by Facebook apparently will result in their not being seen by even people who currently follow my Facebook page, even if I did share them. I'm glad to have done so originally, largely because I think they're enjoyed by you. With them, I certainly did learn a lot about what does and does not work on various social media sites, but I don't expect to use them again as aggressively as I once did. In summary, to successfully explain what to expect from Professor Slots in 2018, I first had to explain what has led up to 2018. How did I get started? What have I tried? What have I succeeded at? What have I not succeeded at? What are my goals? And out of all this, what does my audience of slot enthusiasts seem to particularly like? In 2018, you can expect me to try and grow my audience. I'll be doing my best to provide great content on both my website and podcast show. I'll also continue to build my online resource by reviewing and updating what's going on with slot casino gambling in each U.S. state, territory, and federal district year after year, after year, after year, if I'm lucky and you continue to find it useful. I also plan on adding videos to my new Professor Slots YouTube channel, although this is likely to start later in the year. Another important aspect of growing an audience, which is this year's high-level goal, is to promote. Promote, promote, promote. To do so, I'm reaching out to other gambling podcasts. Maybe they'll agree to interview me. Maybe I'll just call in a lot. The group of us who are gambling podcasters are a community, and we try to support each other as our niche continues to grow as more and more people listen to podcasts. I also have guest blog article opportunities available, which I'll be pursuing. I'll be sure to let you know as these articles, interviews, and guest posts are published. Thanks so much for sticking with me to the end of this segment. I truly believe that 2018 will be a great year for my Professor Slots brand, which means it will be a great year for slots enthusiasts who are members of my audience. I look forward to serving you to the best of my ability, and I hope that this means we'll grow together into a large community. Why? Because that's good business. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. Show notes for this episode are now available within most podcast apps, but are also available on my website at ProfessorSlots.com/E20. Up next is the second segment of the show, Kansas Slot Machine Casino Gambling. In this episode segment, I provide a brief overview of the current state of gambling in a U.S. state, U.S. territory, or U.S. federal district, emphasizing, by far, anything of interest to slot machine casino gamblers. Each state-by-state episode segment can be expected to include an introduction, relevant legal statutes on gambling, if any, slot machine private ownership, state gaming commission, if any, gambling establishments, if any, and a summary. Here goes. Kansas slot machine casino gambling consists of 9 casinos, of which 4 are state-run casinos and 5 are American Indian tribal casinos. A 10th casino, the Woodlands, is currently proposed and under review by the state. The Kansas legislature approved charitable and social gaming in 1974, followed in 1978 by both pari-mutuel racetracks and a state lottery. All state licenses for pari-mutuel facilities in Kansas have since lapsed or been revoked. In 1995, negotiations led to a state tribal compact for the establishment of 4 American Indian tribal casinos. This quickly led to the state granting licensing for 4 non-tribal casinos. All state-run and tribal casinos are open 24 hours. The minimum age of casino gambling is 21. The legal age of gambling in Kansas is 18 years of age for the lottery and pari-mutuel wagering. State gaming regulations require no less than 87% payout return percentages at state-run casinos only. It has been suggested by state officials, but not yet officially proven, that tribal casinos have a minimum payback return percentage of 80%. The state of Kansas does not require its state-run or tribal casinos to release information to the public regarding their slot machine payout percentages. At the present time, all pari-mutuel licenses for horse and dog racing in Kansas have lapsed and been revoked. No pari-mutuel facilities have been open in Kansas since August of 2008. Next up is a usually short statement about slot machine private ownership, which I've included in case you live in this U.S. state and are considering owning a slot machine. Here it is. It is legal to privately own a slot machine in Kansas if it was manufactured before 1950. The Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission has state regulations requiring all gaming machines return no less than 87%. This applies to the state-run casinos only. This 87% payback return percentage to customers is equivalent to a 13% hold percentage for Kansas state-run casinos. There are 10 gambling establishments in Kansas. Here they are. 1. 7th Street Casino and Resort, a tribal casino in Kansas City. 2. Boot Hill Casino and Resort, a state-run casino in Dodge City. 3. Casino White Cloud, a tribal casino in White Cloud. 4. Golden Eagle Casino, a tribal casino in Horton. 5. Hollywood Casino in Kansas Speedway, a state-run casino in Kansas City. 6. Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel, a state-run casino in Pittsburgh. 7. Kansas Star Casino, a state-run casino in Mulvane. 8. Prairie Band Casino and Resort, a tribal casino in Mayetta. 9. Sack and Fox Casino, a tribal casino in Powhatan. And the Woodlands, which is a proposed casino and under review in Kansas City. The Woodlands is a former pari-mutuel facility with a long and troubled history, first as a Greyhound track starting in 1989, later as a horse racing track, before finally closing in 2008. The currently proposed casino is expected to have up to 3,000 gaming machines. In summary, Kansas slot machine casino gambling consists of 9 casinos, of which 4 are state-run casinos and 5 are American Indian tribal casinos. There is one more, a 10th casino, which is under review. The state of Kansas does not require its state-run or tribal casinos to release information to the public regarding their slot machine payout return percentages. No pari-mutuel facilities have been open in Kansas since August of 2008. Remember to visit ProfessorSlots.com/subscribe to get my free report revealing the top 7 online resources for improving your gambling performance, including the one I've used as a top-tier slot machine casino gambler. If you'd like to provide a rating and review for this podcast, which may well help other slots enthusiasts decide to take a listen to one or more of my episodes, simply use your podcast app, visit ProfessorSlots.com/Apple Podcasts if you're an Apple device user, or visit ProfessorSlots.com/Android for Android users. Part 1 of the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast has not yet been decided. Part 2 of the next episode of the Professor Slots podcast is another brief overview of the current state of gambling in a U.S. state, territory, or federal district. This time, I'll be talking to you about the great U.S. state of Kentucky. That's the end of another great episode of the Professor Slots podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Show notes for this episode can be found within most podcast apps or at ProfessorSlots.com/E20. I plan to have the next episode come out very soon for you, where I'll have more amazing content for the show. Until the next episode, have fun, be safe, and make good choices. Bye.